Hello there, this is Dr. Jimmy, and I'm doing this a bit later in the evening, thus allowing the light to be a little bit less intense from out back, and thus allowing you to see me a lot better here. And this is, of course, Friday the 13th! Hope you've had a lucky day. I've had a pretty lucky day. And appropriately enough, I'm talking about Halloween Horror Nights 21, which is all about luck, of course. But this is the 13th, the 13th part of the history of Halloween Horror Nights 21. And speaking of lucky dudes, here we have Most Bodacious Dude. It's my Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure t-shirt. That was from the year 2010, which was the year before 21, of course. And here was something on the sleeve. Halloween Horror Nights 20, so that was from that particular show. There we go. So, in the previous video, I had started talking about the scare zone called 7. That's another lucky number, isn't it? But in this case, it refers to the 7 deadly sins. And I had just gone over what the sins were, but then I had to stop. So let's resume them. So the 7 deadly sins took place on Hollywood Boulevard. And they had it set up with 7 stages, and on each stage was a throne, sort of, where the sin itself could be personified. What sort of entity would personify a sin? Well, they were described as being 7 temptresses. Of course, that makes you think of demons, of course, because those are the ones who tempt you into sin. Yes, the evil, dark lords of hell. In fact, there are 7 demons for the 7 deadly sins in medieval demonology. They're actually more like devils, really, if you're going to be accurate. You know, the virtues have their archangels, and so you have archdemons or devils who are representing the 7 sins. Oddly enough, some of those dudes seem to be the same dude under a different name. I mean, we know a lot of them are names of the same entity that who have multiple names. And so you wonder, is it really 7 different ones, or is it one dude doing 7 different jobs? I'm not certain, because Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer usually are considered the same person. And Beelzebub and Asmodeus was the same name, just in different languages. So it could be, I don't know. But for those of you who really bother to know, the sin of pride is represented by Lucifer, the angel who first fell from grace, who was, of course, filled with pride. So that's where we get the sin of lust is associated with the devil called Asmodeus. The sin of sloth or sloth. It turns out you can use both pronunciations for both the sin and the animal. Apparently the animal is named after the sin. So this was all informed to me by a fellow called Emperor Sephiroth, who sent me a little comment on the previous video. So you can use sloth or sloth, although sloth is a bit old-fashioned, a bit archaic. I guess for my own sake of continuity and to avoid confusion, I'll continue to call the little critter a sloth and continue referring to the sin as sloth, just because I'm an affected twit. Right, there we go. Alright, so getting back to it, well, the demon of sloth is Belphegor. Yes. So, the demon representing envy is Leviathan, the great serpent. Similar to the Jorgenmunder, or the Midgard serpent of Norse mythology, or perhaps the Tiamat of Babylonian legend, the great serpent that lives in the waters, the chaos serpent that many different traditions, the hero or heroic gods had to fight and defeat the terrible chaos serpent, the Hydra, whatever you want to call it, the Leviathan. That's envy. Alright, so let's see, that's 4 of the sins. There's 3 more, aren't there? I did 3 or 4. I did pride and lust and sloth and envy. That's 4. So that's the way, if you're coming down from that's actually the way you would encounter them. If you're walking from the top of Hollywood Boulevard, in the Mills Diner, the Pantages Theatre. If you're walking down Hollywood Boulevard, that's the way you'd encounter them. And as you turn the corner, you meet the other 3, which should be greed, gluttony, and wrath, of course. So the demon of greed, is, I got that right, because Belphegor is no, the demon of greed is Mammon. I should have got that, because Mammon. Mammon's a chap who gets mentioned directly by Jesus in the Bible. A lot of these demons don't show up in the traditional scriptures, but Mammon does show up. He's very much a demon that's mentioned by Jesus by name, and even referencing that this is the demon of greed. So that's actually mentioned, because when they're talking about riches and how people want to be rich and they're greedy, he says you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both God and Mammon, referring to money. And so Jesus actually attributed to that entity the sin of greed. That's so very rare. There's one sense where that does pop up. Because, of course, as he said, the love of money accounteth for many types of evil, or all manner of evil. People tend to misquote that and say money is the root of all evil, but it's more like the love of money is the root of all manner of evil. It's actually what it says. Money can be used for good purposes as well. Very often isn't, however. So that's greed. Then you have gluttony, and the demon of gluttony is Beelzebub. Now, Beelzebub, of course, is also mentioned by Jesus once, because they talked about how they thought he was casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub. When he said that makes no freaking sense. That's not exactly what he said, but that's what he meant. Because how can Beelzebub cast out Beelzebub? That house divided against itself cannot stand. Now, you thought Abraham Lincoln said that. No, Jesus said that. A house divided against itself cannot stand. That's where it all comes from. Lincoln knew that the people he was speaking to knew their Bible. Because back 100 years ago, 150 years ago, people knew their Bible. And the president could quote the Bible without having to actually give you chapter and verse. He could quote it and people knew, oh yeah, that's from the Bible, we know that. Nowadays, of course, most people don't know their Bible. So Hillary Clinton talks about, oh, Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And, oh yeah, Abraham Lincoln said that. And so it's from Jesus. You should know that, Hillary. Don't you go to Sunday school? I think she does. Bill doesn't, but she does. I know that for a fact. So she should know that, and she should know better. Attribute it to our Lord and Savior. Lincoln was just quoting him. Right, enough of that Bible lesson. But again, we're talking about sins. It's a religious topic, after all. The zone is based on a whole religious concept, so you can't avoid it this time. So where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about yes, the demons associated with all the sins. So that's the demon of gluttony, is Beelzebub, which is kind of interesting, because Beelzebub and the demon of lust is Asmodeus, well, they're the same name, Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub is Hebrew, or something Semitic, an offshoot of it, but more or less Hebrew. Lord of the Flies, Baal meaning Lord, and flies, Zebub. And then you have over here Asmodeus, and it's same thing. Asmo meaning of flies, and Deus meaning Lord. So you have Asmodeus, same name, just translated in two different languages. And they weren't actually speaking Latin at that time when they were writing the Old Testament. It wasn't until the Romans came along with Latin. So it's just a name, and they just came up with that, I guess, later on. And the last one is wrath, of course. The demon associated with wrath is Satan himself. Well, isn't Satan and Lucifer the same dude? What about, isn't Satan, Lucifer, and Beelzebub the same guy? I mean, again, yeah, maybe he just, well, he does, well, the devil does run all the sins, really. If you get down to it, he's in charge of all the whole shebang, all 7, actually it's more than 7. Any kind of sin you can think of, he's behind it. That's the whole idea. I mean, that's basically the job description of being a tempter. So I guess, but for whatever reason, when they were assigning demons to sins or devils to sins, they separated out these as if they were 7 different individuals. I don't know why. But you notice they're all dudes. Those are all masculine demons. Well, these aren't masculine demons in the scare zone. They were chicks. They're rather hot, sexy girls, really. But you see, if you know, again, as I was saying, according to Christian faith and to also I think to Islam as well, to some degree, I'm not entirely certain, They have other spirits that have different origins, but for the most part, your devils were angels at one point. They're really the same entities. They just are on the wrong side because they screwed up and they decided to fight the other angels. They got kicked out of heaven, basically. These are the bad angels, and so they rebelled against God. So they're the same sort of critters, they're just now on the other side. So just like angels, they're really not male or female angels, whether they're heavenly or demonic. Basically, the sort of gender, the idea of, you know, biological sex and genitalia, all of that, that's not really a spiritual thing. We can only conceive of them as masculine or feminine because that's the only way our, you know, biped mammalian mind can comprehend that. It just kind of bothers us to think of these supernatural entities that don't fit the way so we've assigned to them genders of some sort, but when they manifest themselves, they'll take either a masculine or feminine aspect, depending on what they're trying to get to do, you see, especially if they're tempting you. That's why your succubus and your incubus could be the same exact demon. It could be one or the other, because they'll take that shape of whom you'll be tempted by. So if you're into boys, they'll show up as an incubus, and if you're into girls, they'll show up as a succubus. And in both cases, they're going to try to get you into naughty sex. Ooh, those sneaky demons. Well, that's just one particular type of tempter. So in this case, they're not necessarily the 7 demons we mentioned, but the 7 temptresses. They took on a female aspect, because that's probably the best way to get most people into sin. Because a lot of guys who want to see the girls, and the girls can also get girls in as well. It doesn't have to be a sexual thing. It can be, hey, let's all girls go out and party together, and and let's do these sins. So that's kind of what it's all like. Even gay guys would fall for that. Absolutely. Hey, let's go shopping. And next thing you know, it's greed. Oh my God. And oh yes, cattiness. Is that a sin? I don't know. It should be. Bob's right here. It doesn't include you. I guess it could be under envy or wrath or some of the others. I mean, all of that leads to cattiness, I suppose. Bob is right here, by the way. My own little temptress. So, we've got the 7 temptresses. So that's the way they did. In every one of these stations, there were like little platforms, little stages, and each sin was on each one. And of course, below that, in the street, were the minions, as we called them, but were actually, of course, the sinners. Those poor chaps who got lured in by the sin and fell for each one of those different demons, those temptresses, delights, and now are caught forever in an orgy of the damned. I use that particular phrase because that was the name of the scare zone I made up completely off the top of my head as a silly joke, part of my April Fool's prank in 2011. That is suggested in that whole X-rated scenario that there was going to be this in Hollywood Boulevard, the 7 deadly sins in an orgy of the damned, and you'd go through all the different sins, and then you would get to, you know, the ultimate punishment when some of the sinners are sacrificed to the demon of fear, and this time taking 3 different forms. That was all part of my April Fool's gag. Now, in this case, it's not exactly the same because there's no sacrificial ceremony. There was something else going on up there at the top of Hollywood Boulevard involving maybe a ritual, sort of. There was some zombie dancing, but we'll get to that later. And of course, there was an icon that took 2 different forms, not 3, 2. So instead of 3 types of fear, we had 2 types of luck. Well, there you go. But the whole idea of a scare zone set up with 7 deadly sins, that was very close to what I suggested, only a little bit less naked than what I suggested, of course, because that was part of my silly joke. And it just tickled me, the irony and the coincidence, if there are such things as coincidences. Someone once told me that coincidence is just God screwing with you. Yes. All right, now where was I? Oh yes, the sins, the temptresses, getting gone off on a little tangent. So each one of these, and they were there, and they were also color coded. I thought that was rather clever. So you start out with Vanity or Pride, whichever you want to call it, and she's in a sort of rosy pink outfit, and the stage, all of that, it has that color coding. Then you go to Lust, and it's bright red and scarlet, you know, like blood, like lust, you know, the sins that are scarlet, yes. Then you go to Sloth, and she's blue, like she's got the blues, because, you know, dun 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 dun, I'm so damn tired, dun 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 dun, I got the blues, I'm just gonna lie back here, because I've got nothing left to lose. No, not that kind of blues, but anyway, she was all blue, and she was lying around. And then, of course, Envy appropriately is green. That's the colour we always associate with Envy. And Greed was all gold. Yes, money, money, money. Yes, all gold for Greed. And Gluttony was a rather decadent shade of purple. And then, of course, as appropriately, Wrath was black. Black Rage. Yes, all that. So we have them all there. And there's colour coded, so you could tell which sin it was, I suppose, by colour. A veritable rainbow of evil. Yes, depravity. So as you go through that, and what was also very clever is when you start out the scare zone, when the event starts in the evening and it's still daylight, you know, still a little bit daylight, and you're walking through there, and the sins are all these beautiful temptresses on their thrones. There's some scary things about the way they look, and their minions are kind of fierce, but they themselves are in their gowns of whatever colour, and they're all wearing these masks, these sort of pale porcelain face mask, kind of like these are Venetian carnival masks, sort of. Hang on, be right back. Not exactly right, but close enough. Close enough, something like this, right? That's a bit more ornate, a bit more Mardi Gras looking, but it's, you know, the white, sort of blank white face, but kind of pretty and sexy, with a little bit of a crown and that sort of thing. So they're wearing that sort of mask, and so they look rather beautiful and seductive, although you can tell by their attitude what sins they are and the way they react. But then, as it gets darker and scarier, suddenly there's a transformation. Of course, they don't transform on stage, it's a cast change. And then there's one cast goes away and next one comes on. The costumes have been modified. They're scantier. Ooh, more skin showing. Ooh, tantalizing. And also the masks are off. And now there's a hideous aspect. Now the demonic images, the demonic true natures have been revealed. At the same time, the music in the Scare Zone alters. It's the same song, but earlier during the masked portion, it's the song. It's a song, by the way. It's "The Beautiful People" by Marilyn Manson. Yeah, and it's being sung originally as a choral song, and a cover that's a classical arrangement with the piano playing, and there's this sort of a girls' choir singing the song. And it sounds kind of lovely. Although you listen closely and you can hear the naughty words and the lyrics are still there. But then they change it up with the other cast when it becomes scary, or scarier, I should say. Then all of a sudden it's actually Marilyn Manson's own version of The Beautiful People. So you've got that happening, a dichotomy. Ooh, another vocabulary word there. But let's describe the sins once they're unmasked, because it's clever. So Pride, okay, she takes her porcelain mask, it comes off, and so Pride's there, she's been standing there with her mirror, admiring herself, you know, kind of all about me, not about you, you don't matter, it's me, I'm Vanity, I'm the princess. She's up there, but when you see her real face, it's like she's had way too much cosmetic surgery, you know, and people do that, they get all tightened up, you know, and then it's like the mouth is like the Joker or something, and there's terrible scars and everything because she's had way too many nose jobs, and the whole thing has gotten rather horrific, even worse than what Michael Jackson looked like at the end of his time. You know, this horrific thing. Very bad plastic surgery. And of course her minions are all these vanity boys with their perfect hairstyles, and they're wearing white suits like the one John Travolta had in Saturday Night Fever, but they've got the same sort of faces, or from way too much cosmetic surgery. So that's how they looked. And I've already got to 20 minutes. Bloody hell. So have to go to part 14.